He installed cameras in every room to catch her stealing. 9 caregivers before her had betrayed him, stolen from him, abandoned his sons when they needed help most. So when he opened the security app at 2 a.m. and saw his black maid sleeping on the cold, hardwood floor between his paralyzed twin sons' beds, his first thought was, "What is she doing?" Then he saw it. Her hands were on their small legs, moving them gently, rhythmically, even in her sleep. Like her body refused to stop fighting for them, even when exhaustion had taken everything else. Marcus Bennett's phone trembled in his hands, his back pressed against the leather chair in his office, and the man who'd built a billion-dollar empire on control watched a woman making $18 an hour do what his money never could, refuse to give up. 3 years ago, Marcus Bennett lost the only thing his wealth couldn't protect. His wife, Elena, died giving birth to their twin sons. The doctors said it was rare, a complication, amniotic fluid embolism, words that meant nothing until they meant everything. One moment she was laughing, saying she couldn't wait to meet them. The next, alarms were screaming, nurses were running, and Marcus was being pushed out of the room while his world collapsed. Ethan and Elijah were born at 11:47 p.m., tiny, premature, fighting for breath. Elena died at 12:03 a.m., 16 minutes between becoming a father and losing his wife. Marcus held her hand until it went cold. Then he walked down that hospital hallway to the NICU to meet his sons, 2 impossibly small bodies hooked to machines, their chests rising and falling with mechanical help. He didn't cry. Couldn't. The grief was too big to feel yet. 3 weeks later, the doctors delivered the second blow. "Mr. Bennett, we need to discuss the boy's prognosis. Cerebral palsy, both of them, severe. The brain imaging shows significant damage from oxygen deprivation during delivery. Their motor function will be severely impaired. Walking is unlikely, possibly never." Marcus heard the words through a fog. His sons were 5 pounds each, still in incubators, and already the medical system was writing them off. There are therapies, of course, early intervention programs, but you need to prepare yourself for the reality that they may never achieve independent mobility. Prepare yourself as if you could prepare for the death of hope. Marcus threw money at the problem the way he'd solved every other problem in his life. He bought a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, 12 bedrooms, medical-grade accessibility, a therapy room that cost more than most houses. He hired specialists, flew in therapists from Boston, Philadelphia, neurologists who'd published papers on pediatric cerebral palsy. He purchased equipment, custom wheelchairs designed for toddlers, standing frames, parallel bars, compression therapy systems. Nothing worked. The boys didn't improve. They sat in their adaptive chairs, small bodies still, eyes distant, physical. Therapists came 3 times a week, moved their limbs through prescribed patterns, documented minimal progress in clinical language that meant no progress at all. Ethan and Elijah were 3 years old now. They couldn't walk, could barely hold their heads steady, made sounds but no words. And Marcus, alone in his massive house, started to accept what the doctors had told him from the beginning. His sons would never stand, never run, never chase each other through these empty hallways the way he'd once imagined. He buried that hope the same place he'd buried Elena. Then came the caregivers. Marcus needed help. He couldn't run his investment firm and provide round-the-clock care, so he hired professionals, people with credentials, references, years of experience. The first one lasted 6 weeks. She seemed perfect until Marcus found her selling photos of the boys to a gossip website. Billionaire's disabled twins inside the tragic Bennett mansion. $2,000 for pictures of his sons in their wheelchairs. The second stole prescription medications, painkillers Marcus didn't even know were missing. until the pharmacy flagged the early refill requests. The third was just lazy. Spent more time on her phone than with Ethan and Elijah. Marcus fired her when he came home early and found both boys in wet diapers, crying while she watched TV in the other room. Number 4 accessed his financial accounts, transferred $15,000 before the bank caught it. 5 through 9 were variations on the same theme: neglect, theft, lies, or simply quitting when the work got too hard. Each betrayal carved away another piece of Marcus's ability to trust. So he installed cameras everywhere: hallways, therapy room, playroom, kitchen. 16 cameras total, all feeding to an app on his phone. He could watch from his office, from his car, from anywhere. At night, he'd sit in his study reviewing footage, rewinding, zooming, looking for the lie, the theft, the moment when whoever he'd hired revealed their true character. Control became his only protection. Trust became impossible. When Rachel Williams walked through his front door on a cold Tuesday morning, Marcus saw exactly what he expected to see. Caregiver number 10, the next person who would fail his sons and prove that money couldn't buy what his family needed. She was black, maybe early 40s, wearing simple clothes, dark pants, a plain blue sweater, both clean but worn soft from years of washing. She carried one bag, small and practical, and her hands were calloused in a way that said she'd worked hard her whole life. Marcus stood in the foyer, tablet in hand, reviewing her file one more time. Rachel Williams, age 43, 9 years as a housekeeper for various families in Stamford. No formal childcare training, no medical certification. Personal reference from a church pastor. The agency had been apologetic when they sent her file. "She's not our usual candidate, Mr. Bennett, but everyone else has declined the position. She heard about your situation and specifically requested to interview." Marcus looked up from the tablet. Rachel stood quietly, not fidgeting, not trying to fill the silence with nervous chatter. Just waiting. "Mrs. Williams," "Ms.," she corrected gently, "but Rachel is fine." "Rachel," Marcus set the tablet down. "I'm going to be direct. 9 people have worked in this house in the past 18 months. All 9 failed. My sons require specialized care. You have no medical training, no experience with disabled children, and no references beyond a pastor who's never met my family." Rachel nodded slowly. "That's all true." "So why are you here?" She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "Because I lost my daughter 7 years ago. She was 12, car accident, and after she died, I spent 2 years barely living, just going through motions, cleaning houses, existing but not really here." Marcus's throat tightened unexpectedly. "Then one day," Rachel continued, "I was cleaning a family's home and saw their little boy in a wheelchair. He had CP, like your son's. And the way his mother looked at him, not like he was broken, just like he was hers, and she loved him. Something woke up in me." She met Marcus's eyes directly. "I'm here because I know what it's like when hope dies. And I know what it's like when you have to choose whether to let it stay dead or fight to find it again." Marcus stared at her. Every caregiver before had talked about their qualifications, their experience, their skills. This woman was talking about grief. "I can't promise I know everything about cerebral palsy," Rachel said quietly, "but I can promise I'll show up every day. I'll learn everything I need to learn, and I won't quit when it gets hard." Marcus should have said no, should have called the agency and demanded someone with actual credentials. But something in her steady gaze, in the way she'd named the thing he'd been living with for 3 years, "When hope dies," made him hesitate. 3 days, he heard himself say. "You have 3 days to show me you can handle this." Rachel nodded. "That's fair." "The boys wake at 7. Their routine is posted in the therapy room. Follow it exactly. Don't improvise, don't experiment. The doctors have given very specific instructions. I understand. There are cameras in every room. Marcus watched her face for a reaction. I review all footage. If I see anything concerning, you're done immediately. Rachel's expression didn't change. Mr. Bennett, if I was planning to do something wrong, cameras would be the least of my worries. God sees everything anyway. Something about the simple way she said it, not preachy, just matter of fact, caught Marcus off guard. Mrs. Chen will show you to your room and introduce you to the boys. He picked up his tablet again, signaling the conversation was over. Don't let them get attached. Most likely you won't last the week. Rachel picked up her small bag. Most likely, Mr. Bennett, you've never met anyone like me. She followed the housekeeper down the long hallway, and Marcus stood alone in his fortress, already regretting his decision. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This story is about to get incredibly emotional, and I don't want you to miss what happens next. That first night, Marcus sat in his office with the security monitors glowing in the darkness. He pulled up the therapy room camera. Rachel sat on the floor between the boys' adaptive beds. Ethan and Elijah were awake. They often were at this hour, their sleep patterns disrupted by years of medical routines and discomfort. Marcus turned up the volume. Rachel wasn't trying to force them to sleep, wasn't frustrated by their restlessness. She just sat there, humming something low and gentle. Marcus leaned closer. He recognized the melody, an old hymn, Amazing Grace. Her voice was soft, untrained but sincere. She wasn't performing, just offering something into the quiet. Elijah's head turned slightly toward the sound. A small movement, but Marcus saw it. Rachel noticed too. She didn't make a fuss, didn't call attention to it, just kept humming, kept being present. After a while, she stood up and moved to Ethan's bed. She adjusted his blanket, smoothed it with careful hands. Then she did something the other caregivers never did. She talked to him. Not baby talk, not the loud, overly cheerful voice people use with disabled children. Just normal conversation, quiet and respectful. I know you're tired, sweetheart, she said softly. Body's tired, but mind's still awake, right? I get that. Sometimes my mind doesn't want to settle either. She sat on the edge of his bed. My daughter used to have trouble sleeping too. We'd talk about her day, all the little things. Made the big stuff feel smaller somehow. Ethan's eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. I bet you got a lot going on in that mind of yours, Rachel continued. A lot you'd say if the words came easier. That's okay. You don't have to talk. I'll just sit here with you. And she did. For 20 minutes, Rachel sat beside Ethan's bed, occasionally humming, sometimes silent, just present. Marcus watched the whole thing. When she finally stood up to check on Elijah, she touched Ethan's hand gently. Good night, baby. Tomorrow's a new day. Marcus closed the laptop. His chest felt strange, tight. He tried to tell himself it meant nothing. She was just doing her job. Being nice didn't mean she was competent, but deep in a place he'd locked away, a small voice whispered, When was the last time you sat with them like that? Day 2 started with structure. Rachel followed the posted routine exactly. Morning medications at 7:15, diaper changes, feeding carefully, patiently, letting each boy set the pace. Morning stretches as prescribed by the physical therapist. Marcus watched it all from his office downtown, checking the cameras between conference calls. She was competent, gentle, nothing to criticize. Then, that afternoon, she broke protocol. Marcus was in a meeting when his phone buzzed with a motion alert from the therapy room. He excused himself, stepped into the hallway, and opened the app. Rachel had moved the boys. They weren't in their usual positions, sitting in adaptive chairs, properly supported with prescribed positioning. She had them on the floor, both of them on a large mat lying on their backs. Marcus's jaw clenched. What was she doing? Rachel knelt between them. She had a small, portable speaker. Where had that come from? Playing music, something classical, gentle piano. Then she began moving Ethan's legs. Not the clinical stretches the therapists did. Something different. She moved his legs like he was walking, rhythmic, purposeful. Left, right, left, right. Your legs remember, baby, she said quietly. Your brain might not be telling them what to do yet, but the muscles remember. We just have to remind them. Marcus should have called her immediately, should have told her to stop. The doctors had been clear, unqualified people attempting therapy could cause harm, but he didn't call. Because Ethan's face had changed. His expression, usually blank, had shifted. His eyes were tracking Rachel's movements. He was paying attention. Rachel moved to Elijah, did the same thing. Gentle, repetitive, patient. You both are so much stronger than anyone knows, she murmured. I see it. Even if they don't, I see it. She worked with them for 30 minutes. Then she carefully moved them back to their chairs, positioned them correctly, and continued the normal routine like nothing had happened. That night, Marcus didn't confront her. He sat in his office, reviewing the footage again and again. Those leg movements, he'd seen research papers about repetitive motor patterning, neuroplasticity, the theory that young brains could form new pathways if stimulated consistently, but the doctors had dismissed it. Too experimental, not evidence-based enough. Don't get your hopes up, Mr. Bennett. So he'd stopped researching, stopped looking for alternatives. And now this woman with no medical training was doing it anyway. Marcus pulled up his laptop and typed, neuroplasticity cerebral palsy toddlers. Articles flooded the screen, studies, case reports, evidence that everything Rachel was doing had scientific backing. He'd just never looked. Week 1 became week 2. Marcus stopped pretending he was watching the cameras for security reasons. He was watching because he couldn't look away. Every night after the house went dark, he'd open his laptop and review the day's footage, not scanning for theft or negligence anymore, watching for something else, progress. It was small at first, so small he told himself he was imagining it, but the changes were there. Ethan held his head steady for longer periods. His eyes tracked movement more consistently. When Rachel sang, and she sang often those old hymns and gospel songs, his face would shift. Not quite a smile, but something close. Recognition. Elijah's hands moved more. His fingers would curl around toys Rachel placed in his palm. He'd hold on for seconds, then minutes. The therapist had noticed during her weekly visit. Mr. Bennett, she'd said, reviewing her notes with confusion. Elijah's grip strength has improved significantly. What changes have you made to his routine? Marcus had lied. Nothing, just following your protocol. But he knew. He'd watched Rachel work with Elijah's hands every single day. Gentle exercises, repetitive movements, always talking to him like he understood, like his effort mattered. You're getting so strong, baby, she'd whisper. Look at you holding on. That's all you, sweetheart. That's your strength. The physical therapist had adjusted her notes, looking puzzled, but pleased. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Thursday afternoon, Marcus came home early. He told himself it was to check on the boys. The truth was more complicated. He wanted to see Rachel's work in person, not through a screen. He entered quietly, expecting to find them in the therapy room, following the posted routine. They weren't there. Marcus heard music coming from the sunroom, a space that hadn't been used in months. He walked down the hallway and stopped in the doorway. Rachel had spread a large mat on the floor. Both boys were lying on it, positioned carefully. She'd opened the curtains, letting in afternoon light that made the room glow. She was working with their legs again, that same rhythmic pattern, but this time she was singing while she did it. "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." Her voice was clear, joyful, not performance, just genuine expression. Ethan was watching her face intently. His mouth moved slightly like he was trying to form sounds. "Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." Rachel moved to Elijah, continued the pattern with his legs. Left, right, left, right. "Your mama's watching you both," she said softly between verses. "I know she is, and she's so proud of how hard you're fighting." Marcus's throat closed. Rachel looked up and saw him standing there. She didn't startle, didn't look guilty, just smiled slightly. "Mr. Bennett, you're home early." "What are you doing?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. "Motor pattern training helps build neural pathways." She continued the movements, unbothered by his presence. "The research is solid, published in several pediatric neurology journals." "I didn't authorize this." "No, sir. You told me to follow the doctor's protocol." Rachel's hands stayed gentle on Elijah's legs. "But you also hired me to care for your sons. And care means more than maintenance. It means believing they can become more than their diagnosis." Marcus stepped into the room. "The doctors said—" "The doctors gave you statistics," Rachel interrupted quietly, "based on what usually happens. They didn't tell you what's possible." "And you know better than medical professionals?" Rachel finally stopped the exercises. She looked up at him with those steady eyes. "I know that giving up on a child guarantees they'll never exceed expectations. And I know your sons deserve someone who refuses to give up." She turned back to Ethan, resumed the movements. Marcus stood there, wanting to be angry, wanting to assert control, wanting to fire her right now for defying his instructions. But he couldn't, because Ethan's legs were moving more smoothly than they had 2 weeks ago, because both boys looked more alert, more present, more alive than he'd seen them in 3 years. "If you're going to do this," Marcus said finally, "document everything. I want notes, what you're doing, when, for how long, any changes you observe." Rachel looked surprised. "You're not firing me." Marcus paused. "I'm telling you to document your work. That's all." Something shifted in her expression, not quite a smile, but close. "Yes, sir, I'll start today." Marcus left the room before she could see how much his hands were shaking. It happened 3 weeks to the day after Rachel arrived. Marcus was in Boston for a board meeting. The session ran late. Acquisitions, shareholder concerns, the usual complications of running a firm managing $4 billion in assets. He was exhausted by the time he checked into his hotel at 11 p.m. His phone buzzed, motion alert, therapy room. Marcus frowned. The boys should have been asleep hours ago. Rachel's schedule was strict about bedtime routines. He opened the security app. The therapy room was dimly lit, just the soft glow of a nightlight. But both boys were awake in their beds, restless. Marcus could see their small bodies shifting uncomfortably. Where was Rachel? Then he saw her, on the floor, between their 2 beds, lying on her side on the hardwood, no blanket, no pillow, just her body on the cold floor. Marcus sat up straight in his hotel bed. What was she doing? He zoomed in, turned up the volume. Rachel wasn't asleep. Her eyes were closed, but her hands were moving. She'd positioned herself so she could reach both beds. Her left hand rested on Ethan's leg through the bed rail, her right hand on Elijah's, and she was moving their legs. Even lying on that floor, exhausted, she was still doing the exercises. Marcus's chest tightened. Her lips were moving. He could barely hear it through the camera's audio, but he could make out words. "Strengthen them, Lord. Give these babies what they need. Not what makes sense to us, but what you know they can become." She was praying while doing therapy. while lying on a cold floor at midnight after working a 14-hour day. Their daddy's heart is so broken. Help him see hope again. Help him believe. Marcus's hands trembled. He watched as Rachel's movements gradually slowed. Exhaustion was taking her, but even as sleep started to claim her, her hands kept moving, left, right, like her body refused to stop fighting even when her consciousness gave up. One hand on each of his sons. All night, Marcus closed the app, set down his phone. He sat in that expensive hotel room, staring at nothing, and felt something crack open inside his chest. Something he'd sealed shut the day Elena died. This woman, this housekeeper making $18 an hour, was sleeping on his floor because she refused to let his sons spend the night without someone believing in them. And he'd been watching them through cameras. Marcus canceled his morning meetings and drove home. 3 hours, barely stopping. His mind racing the entire way. He kept seeing it. Rachel on that floor, hands on his son's legs, praying over them while doing therapy in her sleep. 9 caregivers before her, 9 failures. He'd expected her to be the 10th. Instead, she was... Marcus didn't have words for what she was. He pulled into his driveway at 10:47 a.m. The house was quiet. He entered through the front, nodded at Mrs. Chen, who looked surprised to see him. "Where are they?" "The sunroom, Mr. Bennett. Ms. Rachel has the boys." Marcus was already walking. He heard her voice before he reached the room. That same gentle tone, always patient, always present. "That's it, Ethan. You're doing so good, baby. Just a little more." Marcus stepped into the doorway, and the world stopped. Rachel was kneeling on the mat in the center of the room, arms outstretched. 10 feet away from her, Ethan and Elijah stood upright, not supported by equipment, not held up by an adult, standing on their own 2 feet. Their legs trembled, their small bodies shook with effort, but they were standing. Marcus's phone slipped from his hand. It hit the hardwood with a crack that made Rachel look up. She saw him. Her eyes were wet. "Mr. Bennett." "Come on, babies," Rachel whispered, turning back to the boys. "Come to me. You can do it, just like we practiced." Ethan lifted his right foot. Marcus stopped breathing. His son's foot hovered in the air for one impossible moment. Then it came down, 12 inches forward. A step. Elijah moved next, his left foot shaking but intentional. Another step. Marcus's knees buckled. He grabbed the doorframe. "Yes," Rachel breathed. "Yes, that's it. Keep coming, sweethearts. I'm right here." Ethan took another step, then another. His face was fierce with concentration, an expression Marcus had never seen on his son's features before. Elijah followed his brother's lead. Step, 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 they were walking. His sons, his paralyzed sons, the boys doctors said would never stand, were walking across his sunroom floor. Marcus's legs gave out completely. He slid down the doorframe until he sat on the floor back against the wall. Tears poured down his face. His whole body shook. The boys reached Rachel. She gathered them both into her arms, pulling them against her chest, sobbing openly. "I knew it," she cried. "I knew you could. I knew God didn't bring me here for nothing. I knew it. I knew it." Both boys clung to her, their small arms wrapped around her neck. And Marcus sat on the floor 10 feet away, watching a woman he'd hired 3 weeks ago hold his sons while they did the impossible. 3 years of specialists, 3 years of expensive equipment, 3 years of acceptance that this was their permanent reality. And this woman, this humble, faithful woman who slept on floors and prayed over his sons in the dark, had refused to believe it. Marcus put his face in his hands and wept. Not quiet tears, not controlled grief. This was something deeper, something breaking open every failure, every loss, every night spent watching screens instead of being present with his sons. The shame of it, the weight of it, His sons could walk, they could walk, and he'd almost given up on them. If you're feeling this story in your soul right now, please hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment with a heart emoji if you believe in miracles. What happens next is going to break you in the best way. Marcus should have felt joy. For the rest of that day, he should have celebrated. Should have called the doctors, scheduled evaluations, documented this miracle. Instead, he felt something else growing in his chest, something dark and familiar, jealousy. He watched Rachel work with the boys that afternoon, watched how they reached for her instinctively, watched how Ethan tried to vocalize sounds while looking at her face, watched how Elijah held her hand and wouldn't let go. They loved her. In 3 weeks, they'd bonded with her in a way they'd never bonded with him. Marcus told himself it was because he worked long hours, because he'd been protecting them by keeping his distance, by not getting too close after so much loss. But the truth whispered cruelly, she succeeded where you failed. She believed when you gave up. She's more their parent than you've ever been. That night, Marcus sat in his office reviewing footage again. But this time he was looking for different things. How many hours did she spend with them? How often did they smile at her versus how they responded to him? How naturally she held them compared to his own stiff, careful interactions. The jealousy grew. By midnight, it had twisted into something uglier. She was getting too attached. The boys were getting too dependent. This wasn't healthy. What if she left? What if she broke their hearts the way Elena had broken his? What if she thought she could replace their mother? Marcus opened his laptop and started drafting an email to the agency. Rachel Williams's services are no longer required. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Fire her. Do it now, before she takes more from you than she already has. But he couldn't type the words, because another voice spoke, quieter but more honest. You're not protecting them. You're punishing her for showing you what you should have been all along. Marcus closed the laptop. The breaking point came 2 days later. Marcus arrived home to find Dr. Patterson, the boy's physical therapist, in his foyer, her bag packed, keys in hand. "Mr. Bennett," she said, her expression troubled, "I need to speak with you." About what Rachel is doing with your sons." Marcus's jaw tightened. "What about it?" Dr. Patterson chose her words carefully. "The progress is remarkable, beyond anything I've seen in my 15 years of practice. But I'm concerned about the methods. She's not trained. She's not licensed. And while the results are impressive, there are protocols for a reason." "Protocols that weren't working," Marcus said flatly. "That's not the point. If something goes wrong, if a technique she's using causes injury or setback, you'd have no liability protection. She has no credentials, no malpractice insurance, no—" "She has results," Marcus interrupted. "My sons are walking. They're walking, Dr. Patterson, after 3 years of your protocols producing nothing." The therapist's face flushed. "I understand you're emotional about this, but I'm not emotional. I'm clear." Marcus's voice was ice. "For 3 years, I paid professionals to tell me what my sons couldn't do. Rachel showed me what they could." Dr. Patterson gathered her things. "I'll submit my final evaluation, but I recommend you consult with a medical ethics board about this situation. What she's doing may be producing results, but it's also highly irregular, and irregular has consequences." She left. Marcus stood in his foyer, her words echoing. Irregular has consequences, no liability protection if something goes wrong. The fear wrapped around his chest and squeezed. What if Rachel's methods hurt them? What if they regressed? What if this miracle was actually dangerous? He walked to the sunroom. Rachel was there with the boys doing the exercises. Ethan was standing at the parallel bars she'd improvised from furniture. Elijah sat nearby, watching his brother with such focus it made Marcus's heart ache. "We need to talk," Marcus said. Rachel looked up. Something in his tone made her expression shift. "Okay, let me just—" "Now." She carefully positioned both boys in their chairs, told them she'd be right back, and followed Marcus to his office. He closed the door. "Dr. Patterson just quit," he said. Rachel nodded slowly. "I thought she might. She raised concerns about your methods, about liability, about you working without credentials, about the risks." "And what do you think, Mr. Bennett?" "I think," Marcus said, the words coming faster now, fueled by 3 days of festering jealousy and fear, "that you've overstepped. You were hired to provide basic care, not to conduct experimental therapy on my sons." Rachel's expression didn't change. "They're walking. For now, but what happens when they try something your untrained methods can't handle? What happens when there's a complication?" "Then we handle it together." "No." Marcus's voice rose. "There's no we here. These are my sons. You're an employee, and I'm starting to think you've forgotten that line." Rachel flinched slightly. "I haven't forgotten anything. Haven't you? The way they look at you, the way you talk to them like they're yours. You're getting attached, and you're teaching them to depend on you. What happens when you leave?" "I'm not leaving." "Everyone leaves," Marcus said, and there it was, the poison spilling out. "My wife left. 9 caregivers left. You'll leave too, and when you do, my sons will be devastated. Except now they'll be devastated after learning to walk, after believing in miracles, after trusting someone who was never going to stay." Rachel's eyes glistened. "Mr. Bennett—" "This is inappropriate," Marcus continued, his voice shaking. "The attachment, the methods, all of it. I can't have someone working here who thinks faith is a substitute for medicine." "I never said that." "You didn't have to. I've watched the footage. You pray over them like God's going to fix what doctors couldn't. You fill their heads with hope when hope is dangerous. You're setting them up for failure." Silence. Rachel stood very still. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "You're not afraid I'm setting them up for failure. You're afraid they've already succeeded without you." The words hit like a slap. "That's enough," Marcus said coldly. "I want you gone by tomorrow morning." Rachel's breath caught. "You're firing me?" "I'm protecting my sons from someone who's gotten too involved and is operating beyond her capability." "Mr. Bennett, please—" "Tomorrow morning, Rachel. I'll pay you through the end of the month, but I want you out of this house." Rachel stood there, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Those boys are just learning to trust. If I leave now, if you stay, they'll trust someone who was never qualified to be here. It's better this way." "Better for who?" Rachel's voice broke. "Better for them or better for you? Get out of my office." She left. And Marcus sat alone in his fortress, telling himself he'd done the right thing. The boys knew something was wrong before anyone told them. That afternoon, when Rachel came to do their exercises, her eyes were red. Her hands trembled slightly as she moved through the routine. Ethan kept staring at her face. His small hand reached toward her cheek, touching it like he could feel her sadness. Rachel tried to smile. "It's okay, baby. We're okay." But she wasn't okay, and somehow they knew. That evening, Marcus told them. He'd practiced the words, made them sound reasonable, logical. Rachel had to leave for another job. They'd have someone new soon. Everything would be fine. Ethan's face went blank. Elijah started crying immediately, a sound that tore through the house. "She'll visit," Marcus lied. "You'll still see her." But the boys didn't believe him. They'd heard promises before. That night, Rachel packed her small bag. She moved through the room she'd barely used, gathering her few belongings. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. "This is wrong. the older woman said firmly. Those boys need you. Mr. Bennett has made his decision. Mr. Bennett is a fool. Mrs. Chen's voice was sharp. He's terrified, so he's destroying the best thing that's happened to this house in 3 years. Rachel closed her bag. I can't stay where I'm not wanted. Those boys want you. That should be enough. But it wasn't. Rachel's last morning came gray and cold. She went to the therapy room at dawn before Marcus was awake. The boys were still sleeping, or pretending to. She knelt between their beds. I have to go, she whispered. But I need you to remember something. You're not broken, you're not too much, and you're not unlovable. What you did, standing, walking, trying, that was all you. That was your strength. Ethan's eyes opened. They locked onto hers. Your daddy loves you, Rachel continued, her voice breaking. He's just scared. Scared people do things that hurt, but that doesn't mean they don't care. You understand? Neither boy moved. Rachel kissed both their foreheads. I'm so proud of you. Every single day I'm proud. She stood up, walked to the door, and left. Behind her, Elijah started screaming, a sound that would fill the house for hours. By that evening, the boys had regressed completely. They wouldn't stand, wouldn't attempt the exercises, sat in their wheelchairs staring at nothing. When Marcus tried to interact, Ethan turned his face away. When the new caregiver the agency sent tried to help, Elijah screamed until he vomited. The house returned to what it was before Rachel arrived, cold, quiet, broken. And Marcus stood in the center of it, watching his sons retreat back into silence, and realized what he'd done. He'd destroyed the one good thing that had happened to them since Elena died. He'd destroyed it because he was jealous, afraid, and couldn't stand that someone else had succeeded where he'd failed. That night, Marcus sat in his office watching old footage of Rachel with the boys, watched her sleep on the floor with her hands on their legs, watched her kneel beside them whispering encouragement, watched her believe when everyone else had given up. And he knew he had to fix this, even if it destroyed his pride, even if she hated him. He had to try. 3 days after Rachel left, Marcus stopped sleeping. The house had returned to its tomb-like silence. Ethan and Elijah wouldn't eat, wouldn't engage, sat in their wheelchairs staring at nothing like all the progress had been erased. The new caregiver lasted 6 hours before she quit. Mrs. Chen found Marcus that night, standing in the sunroom where he'd watched his sons walk for the first and last time. You need to bring her back, the housekeeper said. She won't come, not after what I said. Then you go to her. You beg if you have to. Mrs. Chen pulled a piece of paper from her apron, an address in Stamford. Even the agency thinks you're wrong. Marcus took it with shaking hands. Saturday morning, Marcus drove to Stamford. The address led him to a neighborhood where streets had potholes and houses sat close together with chain-link fences. Rachel's building was a 3-story walk-up with patched aluminum siding. He climbed to the 3rd floor and knocked on 3C. A woman opened the door, mid-50s with Rachel's eyes but harder. I know who you are, she said coldly. You're the man who fired my sister for loving your sons too much. I need to speak with her, please. She's not here. And even if she was, why would she see you? You know how many nights I heard her crying? I made a mistake. Get out of my building. The woman pointed to the stairs. Rachel doesn't need your money or your apologies. The door slammed. Marcus stood there staring at the peeling paint, then knocked again. A younger man appeared. My aunt asked you to leave. Don't make me ask twice. Marcus backed away and spent an hour sitting in his car, staring at the building. A rich man, rejected by people who had every right to hate him. Sunday, he returned. Rachel's sister wouldn't open the door. Monday, he tried the church from her file. The pastor was kind but firm. Rachel came to us 7 years ago, barely holding on after her daughter died. We watched her rebuild. Then your job broke her again. I need to make it right. What have you changed, Mr. Bennett? Marcus had no answer. Tuesday evening, Mrs. Chen found Marcus in his office, staring at empty monitors. She set down papers. I found these under Elijah's bed. Drawings, crude crayon stick figures, 2 small ones and 1 tall one with curly hair. Rachel, another showed 3 figures holding hands. A family. The third showed 2 figures in wheelchairs, with X's over them, then the same figures standing with arms raised, celebrating. The last was 2 words in Ethan's shaky letters, "Come back, come back." Marcus's vision blurred. They've been making these at night? They know you fired her. They don't understand why. Marcus picked up the drawings with trembling hands. How do I fix this? You humble yourself. You keep trying, and you pray that woman's heart is bigger than your pride. Wednesday afternoon, Marcus waited outside the house in Darien where Rachel cleaned. When she emerged at 5:15, she saw his car and froze. Marcus got out slowly. I'm not here to pressure you. I'm here to give you something. He held out an envelope. Rachel took it, opened it. The boy's drawings. Her face crumpled as she stared at the crayon figures and wobbly letters spelling "comeback." They made those after you left, Marcus said quietly. They hide them under their beds. Rachel's hands trembled. I'm not asking you to come back for me, Marcus continued. I'm asking for them, because they're dying without you. The hope you gave them is dying. Mr. Bennett, I'll stay out of your way. I'll let you work, however you want. I'll do whatever you need. His voice broke. Please. Rachel looked at the drawings for a long time. Tears fell onto the paper. I need time, she whispered. You broke my heart, too. I have to figure out if I can survive being in that house again. How much time? I don't know. She looked up. Do you understand what it costs to love someone else's children, to give everything and know they'll never really be yours? No, Marcus admitted, but I'm starting to. Rachel folded the drawings carefully. I'll call you, that's all I can promise. She walked away, carrying the envelope against her chest. 3 days passed. No call. Marcus worked from home, sitting with Ethan and Elijah every morning and evening. He tried doing the exercises Rachel had done, clumsy, unsure, but he tried. The boys tolerated it, didn't engage, but didn't resist. On the 4th day, his phone rang at 6:47 p.m. Mr. Bennett, Rachel's voice. His heart stopped. Rachel, I need you to understand something before I answer. Anything. If I come back, it can't be like before. You can't watch me through cameras looking for mistakes. You can't fire me because you're uncomfortable. And you can't be absent. I'll be present, I promise. I need more than promises. I need commitment. Her voice was firm. You have to show up for them. Learn the exercises. Be their father, not just their provider. I will. And if you ever speak to me that way again, accuse me of being inappropriate when I'm just loving them, I walk. No second chances. Understood. Why should I believe you've changed? Because I sat with them every night this week. I moved their legs like you did. I sang to them, badly, but I tried. I haven't checked the cameras once. His voice caught. I'm learning to trust. Silence. I'll come back. Marcus's eyes closed. Thank you, but I have conditions. Monday through Friday, 7 to 5. $30 an hour. You reimburse supplies, and you get therapy. Marcus paused. Therapy? You're carrying grief you haven't processed. It's affecting how you parent. If you don't start within 2 weeks, I leave. I'll call someone tomorrow. Then I'll see you Monday, 7 a.m. Rachel, thank you. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for them. Don't make me regret it. Monday morning, 6:53 a.m., Marcus heard the doorbell. He'd been awake since 5, pacing, Nervous, he opened the door. Rachel stood there in her simple clothes, small bag in hand, that worn Bible tucked under her arm. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett." "Good morning." He stepped aside. "The boys are in the therapy room. They don't know you're coming." Rachel nodded and walked down the familiar hallway. Marcus followed at a distance. She pushed open the therapy room door. Ethan and Elijah sat in their wheelchairs, facing the window. The morning light caught their small profiles. Rachel set down her bag quietly. "Good morning, babies." Both boys' heads whipped around. For one frozen moment, they stared, like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then Elijah made a sound. High, desperate, joyful. Ethan's face broke open. His mouth formed a word he'd never spoken before. "Ray Ray." Rachel dropped to her knees as both boys lunged forward, not rolling in their chairs, pushing themselves up, standing, walking. They stumbled toward her with determination Marcus had never seen, their legs shaking but holding, and Rachel caught them both as they crashed into her arms. "You came back," Elijah sobbed. "You came back." "I'm here," Rachel cried, pulling them against her chest. "I'm here. I'm staying, I promise." "We thought you left forever," Ethan whispered into her shoulder. "No, baby. No, I'm not going anywhere." Both boys clung to her, their small bodies shaking with sobs, and Rachel held them like she'd never let go. Marcus stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face, watching his sons walk for the second time, this time toward someone who'd proven she wouldn't abandon them. If this story is touching your heart, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances. We're almost at the end, and what happens next will restore your faith. The first week back, Marcus kept his promise. He worked from home 3 days, learned the exercises from Rachel, his movements awkward at first, but improving. Sat with the boys during therapy instead of watching through cameras. Rachel was patient with him, showing him how to position their legs, how to read their cues, how to be present without controlling. "They need to know you see them," she said one afternoon. "Not their limitations, them." Marcus was learning. By week 3, something had shifted. Ethan reached for Marcus's hand during exercises. Elijah laughed at his father's terrible singing. They were becoming a family. Not the one Marcus had imagined with Elena, but something new. Something built from broken pieces that had somehow formed something beautiful. One evening, Rachel stayed late to finish documentation. Marcus found her in the therapy room writing notes. "Rachel, can I ask you something?" She looked up. "Of course. Why did you come back, really?" Rachel set down her pen. "Because I've lost a child, Mr. Bennett. I know what it feels like when someone you love is gone forever, and I couldn't let those boys lose someone when there was still a chance to fight for them. They're lucky to have you. We're all lucky to have each other." Rachel smiled. That's what family means. 3 months after Rachel returned, Marcus took the boys to the garden Elena had designed before she died. He'd avoided this space for 3 years. Too painful. But Rachel had suggested it gently. They should know about their mama, the good parts. They sat on a bench, Ethan on one side of Marcus, Elijah on the other. Rachel sat on the grass nearby, giving them space but staying close. "Your mother planted these flowers," Marcus said, pointing to the roses climbing the trellis. "She said every garden needs something that keeps growing even when you're not watching." Ethan touched a yellow bloom carefully. "She's in heaven." "Yes." "Does she know about Rachel?" Elijah asked. Marcus looked at Rachel, who'd gone very still. "I think she does," Marcus said quietly, "and I think she's grateful. Grateful that someone loves you the way she would have." A butterfly, bright yellow with black edges, landed on the rose Ethan was touching. It sat there, wings opening and closing slowly. "That's Mama," Elijah whispered with absolute certainty. "She's saying hi." The butterfly lifted, circled once, then landed on Rachel's shoulder. Rachel's hand came up slowly to touch near it, tears sliding down her face. "Hi, Elena," she whispered. "I'm taking good care of them, I promise." The butterfly stayed for one more moment, then flew up into the afternoon sun and disappeared. Marcus reached over and took Rachel's hand. "Thank you. For everything." She squeezed back. "Thank you for letting me stay." 6 months later, the house was unrecognizable. Laughter lived in the corners. Music played in the therapy room. The boys walked everywhere now, still unsteady sometimes, but determined. Marcus had restructured his entire life. He worked from home more than the office, had dinner with the boys every night, learned to sing Rachel's hymns, even though he still couldn't carry a tune. He'd been in therapy for 4 months, processing Elena's death, his fear, his tendency to control what he couldn't fix. Rachel had become family in ways neither of them could have predicted. Not hired help. Not just a caregiver. Aunt Rachel, the boys called her now. One evening, after the boys were asleep, Marcus and Rachel sat in the living room reviewing their progress charts. "They've exceeded every milestone," Rachel said, smiling. "The doctors can't believe it." "You can't believe it," Marcus corrected. "You never gave up." Rachel looked at him. "We did it together. That's what made the difference." Marcus nodded. "I called my lawyer yesterday." Rachel's expression shifted. "What?" "I'm setting up a trust for the boys, and I'm naming you as co-guardian." He held up a hand before she could protest. "If something happens to me, I need to know they're with someone who loves them, someone who won't give up on them. That's you." Rachel's eyes filled. "Mr. Bennett." "Marcus, please, we're family now." "Marcus." She wiped her eyes. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep fighting for them, that's all I need." "Always," Rachel whispered, "for as long as I breathe." 1 year later, the backyard had been transformed into a playground. Accessible equipment Marcus had custom built, soft surfaces, and plenty of space for 2 boys who couldn't stop moving. Ethan and Elijah ran circles around the garden, chasing each other and laughing. Really running now, their legs strong and sure. Marcus stood on the patio with Rachel watching them play. "Remember when the doctors said they'd never walk?" Rachel said softly. "I remember when I believed them," Marcus replied. "Thank God you didn't." A car pulled up. Mrs. Chen emerged with a cake, the boys' 5th birthday. The afternoon filled with celebration. Pastor Williams came from Rachel's church, her sister and nephew who'd finally forgiven Marcus, Mrs. Chen and the household staff who'd witnessed the transformation. As the sun set, Ethan climbed into Marcus's lap. "Daddy, are you happy?" Marcus's throat tightened. His sons had started calling him Daddy instead of Father 3 months ago. He still wasn't used to how good it felt. "Yes, buddy, I'm happy." "Me too," Ethan said, then wriggled free to join Elijah with Rachel. Marcus watched his sons curl up on either side of the woman who'd saved them all. Not with money, not with credentials, with faith, patience, and a love that refused to quit. He thought of Elena, wondered if she could see them now, wondered if she knew how close he'd come to losing everything, how close he'd come to destroying the miracle because he was too broken to recognize it. But grace had given him a second chance, and he'd finally learned what true wealth meant. Not the mansion, not the money, not the empire he'd built. True wealth was this: 2 sons running through a garden, a woman who loved them like they were hers, and a man who'd finally learned that showing up was worth more than any security system could ever provide. Marcus pulled out his phone, not to check cameras but to take a photo. His family. Imperfect, patched together from broken pieces, but whole. He sent the photo to his therapist with a caption, "We made it." Then he put the phone away and joined them on the grass, because he was finally present, finally healing, finally home.